Who is he? He is what we call in Russian, gopnik, right? The liar, the thief. It's not at all the image that he was trying to project, but he thought he had time to become a great Russian ruler. In 1 second, becomes a mirage. Good day, everybody. Casablanca 22 is here back again with Regina Rivazova and Alex Chihorsky. And we remind you that we are watching the world events, especially the Ukraine war, from afar, from the security of American soil. We are trying to look over the horizon, understand, sometimes guess, and use our personal experience to try to see further down the road and understand what consequences everything that's going on today in Ukraine and Europe, how it will change our lives and the lives of the people involved in the future. I would like to ask Regina today. She's more knowledgeable in the current day-to-day what's going on in the Ukraine war. She should tell us what her thoughts are about what will happen in the near future, because as of today, we probably will change a little bit our way of doing things and look at the more near future, like next several months. So, Regina, please tell us what you think.
Hi, Sasha. That was a great introduction. You're sounding like a professional host or something. And I'll just jump right in. What have I noticed since we last spoke? Well, a lot of the analytics, a lot of the experts, they're predicting a slowdown. A slowdown in terms of a slow burning, kind of very bloody, probably little common sense type of war that Putin is willing to wage. There's a term in Russian, and that's the closest term that instantly popped in my mind. Russians say naizmor, brать naizmor, which is, I don't know, Alex, if you have some ideas how to translate it.
To exhaust.
To exhaust. Thank you. To exhaust. Yeah, to exhaust, because Putin has resources that the democracies, the Western democracies, kind of don't, although they're not participating directly in the war. He doesn't count his casualties, no civilian casualties are taken into account at all. But in terms of soldiers, generals, officers, major losses, he doesn't care. So he can wage that type of war for a long time. And I think that's what's now on the table. He sees that fatigue. Western world, collective Western world is experiencing this fatigue in terms of, okay, when is it going to end? How is it going to end? What is exactly the end? Is there any resolution to this, or it's just going to go on and on forever? Zelensky expressed it several times. He said, we have tremendous loss. When Russia announces that they've overtaken this tiny village, nobody knows. Basically, if you're watching Russian state TV, they are announcing about these taken territories, which would be like a village of like 50 houses.
Great victories.
As a great victories, as if they occupied Paris or London.
Exactly.
You know, that's how basically they portrayed, which is it's beyond ridiculous. But this is what it is. So this is what I've been observing: fatigue, slowdown, and Putin is basically maybe deciding to take this. I'm going to exhaust your resources. I'm going to exhaust you, and we'll see who's going to win.
This is precisely what I think is happening. But I look at it from a completely different point of view. Because remember, you said that the consensus today that that it will be frozen, right? But my general conclusion is different. I am a student of great military historians like Felštinsky, Suvorov, Mark Solonin, small number of historians who found the way to look through the propaganda and only paying attention to the facts. I was studying these people and their method All my life I was fascinated, especially by the works of Viktor Suvorov, which I everybody recommend to read. Unfortunately, his books about the history of the World War II, that was, I think, published in English by Hamish Hamilton in England in somewhere in the mid 80s, and a majority of that edition was, believe it or not, burned. Today, to find that book in English, the original book, I paid, I believe, $600 or $800 15 years ago to the widow of American brigade general who had it in his library. Why I'm telling you that story? Because I would like you to understand how I came to my conclusions. When I started to think about everything that is happening today, I asked myself a question: what was the weirdest part, the strangest part, the unexpected part of what we heard in January, February of this year, in the time before the invasion? You remember how American and British intelligence services was warning the Ukraine, and Zelensky was basically openly laughing at them. And all that was very strange and unusual, you know? And then we saw on the Russian TV that press conference where what they call Совет Безопасности, which is what it would be in English, Security Council. There was Security Council, and everybody thought that it would be, just another pretense demonstration. And suddenly it turned out to be when the Shuvalov, I think his last name, or I don't remember what his name, the head of the Russian foreign intelligence, he was trying to tell, well, let's do this, let's do that. And Putin, in a very irritative and very ominous voice, said, what are you proposing? Are you proposing that we start a new round of negotiations?
Now, can you clarify, was that before the invasion?
Yes, it was several days before. Although it was the recording, they did not cut it out. It was a demonstration of Putin's irritation, of Putin's determination, and Putin's iron will to squash anybody who stands between him and his decision. And I understand that why would such a hurry all of a sudden? For 8 years, basically Kremlin was doing nothing. They would just supply, they feed a small diet of ordnance and everything, to the army in Donbass. They basically doing what they're always doing, is they're freezing the conflict. What they did with Ossetia, what they did with with Moldova, what they did with Abkhazia. They always do that. They get someplace, they create a platform, they put a little bit of a military there, and they freeze it. And I started to ask myself, what changed? He was not pushed by his circle. The pushing was him himself.
What was unusual about that conference? Because is it unusual for Putin to be irritated?
No. He is irritated. I remember him. And also remember that I am his classmate. You know what I'm saying? And although I did not have a lot of direct conversation with him, because again, we were in the same university, same year and everything, but he was in the jurisprudence and I was a geologist, right? But we had common lectures, all that philosophy, Marxism, and all this hogwash that we had to listen. Plus, one day a week, we had a military training, as every university students in Russia has. We had it on the same day. So I very well remember that. So I kind of understand that his type. You know what I'm saying? I can read him like you can read your classmates. And I saw him irritated when he was giving that famous speech about killing the terrorists in
Chechens.
Killing Chechens in the outhouses. Remember that?
Yeah.
That's his irritation. It was very rare.
So that was 1999.
Yes, that was a long time ago. With time, he was presenting himself in a more and more mellow way. He was this, this older,
like a kind Tsar.
Yes, statesman. You know what I'm saying? And suddenly, that anger, that animalistic thing came back in that his delivery in the Security Council. And he showed everybody his teeth. So you guys, don't you dare. I'm telling you that we are going. That means that we are going. I invited you here, for the decorum, but don't give me a lip. Allow me to remind you again that for quite some time, we know that he has a cancer process going, right? We don't know exactly what it is. So with that knowledge, I came to a conclusion that suddenness, that abrupt change in his behavior is due to the probably fact that his doctors had no choice than to tell him, Mr. President, let's say you have a year. And that changed dramatically. Again, this is the theory, right? I was not there. I was not holding a candle, so to speak.
Yeah, it's absolute theory.
It's absolute theory. But that explains so many things that I decided to...
Like what? Like haste?
First of all, it explained haste. Secondly, imagine suddenly a Mr. President who is kind of have a horizon of several years, is making plans for this and this. Suddenly he understands that within a very short time he may be gone. And who is he? He is what we call in Russian gopnik, right? The riffraff, the liar, the thief, like an episode in a Russian history where something really dirty, lying, came to the power. It's not at all the image that he was trying to project, but he thought he had time to become a great Russian ruler. As you know, in Russia, the biggest thing is a territory, right? So acquiring territory or bringing back, some kind of a, uniter of the Russian, of the Slavic world, and all that in 1 second becomes a mirage. And what he does, of course, he jumps, he gets from the shelf the one of the variants of that was prepared for him for 2014 by the General Staff, and without changing anything, without updating it, threw it at the military and said, this is what you're going to do. Creating, of course, immediately a havoc, because nobody was expecting that. And that's what we saw at the Security Council. We immediately saw the responsible people, like, the intelligence, the head of the intelligence services, who was trying to delay it in some way. They were told, no, now you're going to lay down and you're going to do what I tell you to do. Why am I telling you that? Because the psychology of Putin is the last on my thought. But I think that when the world prepares for the slowdown, it's a big mistake. I don't know if it's a radical mistake. I don't know if it's going to change something, but I think that what we will see is an acceleration. Because every day spent without a victory now is a day wasted. It's a TikTok situation. It's a TikTok for him. And he will throw every possible resource into the front. And he will rejoice. And the generals know that. And I can only imagine when I hear you and the news you're telling about how they hoist, that small, when they take the small village and they pretend that they took Paris. That's exactly what they do, is that they know that any good news for him today is honey to his heart. But the most important thing is, I believe we will see the acceleration. We will see a desperate attempt to throw in more reserves, more and more lives of his soldiers and his officers being put online. I hate to say good, but this is better for the world than if this whole situation will be slowly frozen and the Ukraine will be put in a situation like the Moldova, like all the small countries were, and it will slowly bleed for years.
I don't have information about the frozen conflict in Ukraine. We're not even there yet. I don't think anyone is discussing it at this point. What people are saying is that the war is going to go on and on, even if he grabs the entire Donbass. Internally, I don't know if you hear the reports of this. This is not media based, so I cannot really tell you that this is fact checked, but the individuals, the Ukrainians that live on the occupied territories, you hear about the explosions, right? You hear about how people internally target the officials that Russians are putting there, blowing up their cars and offices and everything. And then what follows is a bloody response from the occupiers. So my point is that tremendous suffering, humiliation, lots of deaths right now that are happening there. But I'm pointing toward the idea of how horribly difficult it is going to be to hold these territories, even those territories that they grabbed right now. It's easier to capture them, as you know, right? But the second point is that I think nobody is talking about frozen conflict yet. They're talking about continuous bloodshed.
No, you're absolutely right. I was using the word frozen, not applying it as, just to stop it. But by freezing is that making it a very slow, like not a hot war, what we call it, not a cold war because it's completely different terminology, but to lower the temperature of war, to make it a long, what we call like an embers of war. You know what I'm saying? Don't make it a fire, but just keep the embers hot.
And actually, your theory lies really perfectly into two things that I was listening to. Again, I'm making sure that everybody understands this is a theory. But since we discussed it, two things really stand out. One, how they approached Kiev. The move onto Kiev, no one was understanding why are you doing this? Why would you do this? Your theory explains it. That's number one. Number two, Macron made the statement about don't humiliate Russia. If that theory proves to be correct, is he trying to postpone this just to make sure that this person is gone? And you know what I mean?
Yeah, before the big thing of quote-unquote humiliating Russia, before it happened, let this guy go, and then we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, and one more thing, Sasha, I wanted to add about South Ossetia, actually. The referendum, what was proposed in Georgia's breakaway state that is controlled by Russians, which is South Ossetia. It's a tiny little piece of land with maybe 30,000 overall population. It's basically one small town and a couple of villages there. I mean, not a couple, maybe a few. The former president that didn't end up getting reelected, he announced about a but the wish to hold a referendum to join big and mighty Russia. That's how it was portrayed on the media. Completely came from Moscow. Entirely, absolutely came from Moscow. It was directed to the officials of South Ossetia to offer that. And then in a very Russian way, I noticed Kremlin responded, it's not on the table of negotiations. It's a very Russian way of playing. And I know it's probably difficult to explain, but playing the situation, which again confirms that things might be rushed for some reason. And whatever affirmation of the greatness of Russia and Putin Kremlin can pull, they're going to do it.
Yeah, we'll see. It will come sooner or later because they cannot, this is something that they cannot hide.
Thank you, Sash.
Thank you, Regina. That was a good day. I talk to you again.
Yeah, talk to you soon.